I am Megan Anderson, 34 years old, and I built my life from absolutely nothing. The email from my mother appeared after 10 years of silence, a family reunion invitation clearly sent to me by accident. 10 years since I walked out of their house, 10 years of building my own success while they pretended I no longer existed. They had no idea the luxury beach house they rented for their perfect family gathering was mine. I did not yell when they walked in and saw me. I just watched them freeze. If you have ever felt excluded by your own family, drop a comment below telling me where you are watching from, and hit subscribe to join others who understand that sometimes the family we choose is stronger than blood. Growing up in a modest 3-bedroom house in Boston, I always knew where I stood in my family hierarchy. My parents, Judith and Harold Anderson, never tried to hide their preference for my younger sister, Stephanie. 3 years, my junior Stephanie was the golden child from the moment she was born, with her perfect blonde curls and winning smile. I had taken after my father with straight brown hair and serious eyes, but somehow that resemblance never translated into connection. Our family photo albums tell the story better than words ever could. Stephanie front and center in every frame, my parents beaming beside her. Me always slightly off to the side, as though I were a family friend rather than their firstborn daughter. I learned to accept my place on the periphery early on. I was the responsible one, the child who brought home straight A's and never caused trouble. By 16, I was organizing the family budget and helping my parents navigate their taxes. My reward for this maturity was not praise but increased expectations. Excellence was my baseline, not something worthy of celebration. I still remember my senior year science fair. I had spent months developing a project on sustainable urban planning that won first place and a college scholarship. My parents attended the ceremony, but left early to make it to Stephanie's dance recital. When I arrived home clutching my trophy, my mother said, "That is nice, dear. Did you see how beautiful your sister looked in her costume tonight?" That was our dynamic. I achieved, they acknowledged briefly, then pivoted to Stephanie. When I announced my intention to study business in college, my father looked genuinely confused. "But Andersons are teachers," he said. 4 generations of my family had worked in education. My mother taught 3rd grade. My father was a high school principal. My grandparents had been professors. By choosing business, I was breaking tradition. "I want something different," I told them. "I want to build something of my own." My mother pursed her lips in that way that meant disapproval without direct confrontation. "Well, I suppose someone has to do those sorts of jobs." I paid my own way through college at Boston University. While my parents covered every cent of Stephanie's education at a private liberal arts college, they made it clear that my choice to stray from the family path meant financing it myself. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously: waitressing mornings at a diner, near campus administrative work at the university office between classes, and bartending on weekends. I graduated with honors despite the exhaustion, with a degree in business and a minor in real estate development. My graduation ceremony was another study in contrasts. My parents attended but spent most of the time discussing Stephanie's upcoming senior recital the following year. I introduced them to my professors, who praised my work ethic and intellect. My father nodded politely while checking his watch. My mother asked if I had applied to any teaching positions yet, as though my entire degree had been a phase I would outgrow. I secured my first job with a commercial real estate firm in Boston. My starting salary was impressive for a new graduate, and I called my parents with the news, hoping finally for some recognition. "That is nice, Megan," my mother said. "Did you hear Stephanie got the lead in her senior showcase?" I began to build my life separate from them. I found a small apartment downtown and immersed myself in work. Each success I achieved seemed to push my family further away, rather than drawing them closer. When I closed my first major property deal after just 8 months on the job, I brought a bottle of champagne to Sunday dinner to celebrate. My father frowned at the bottle. "You know your grandmother struggled with alcohol, Megan. This is not appropriate. The champagne remained unopened. My achievement went unacknowledged. Stephanie announced she had been accepted to a summer theater program in New York, and my parents spent the rest of dinner planning their trips to see her perform. I began declining Sunday dinners, making excuses about work commitments. The distance grew, but somewhere deep inside, I still harbored the childish hope that eventually my success would be significant enough to earn their approval. I just needed to achieve more, earn more, prove more. That desperate need for validation would drive me for years before I finally understood it could never be fulfilled by them. The breaking point came during Thanksgiving dinner 10 years ago. I was 24 and had just been promoted to junior partner at my firm, the youngest in the company's history. The achievement had come with a significant raise and bonus. For the first time in my life, I felt genuinely proud of myself, not just for the accomplishment, but for the perseverance it had required. I arrived at my parents' house feeling hopeful, carrying an expensive bottle of wine and wearing a new dress purchased specifically for the occasion. The entire extended family was gathered: grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. I had practiced how I would announce my news, trying to sound confident, but not boastful. I never got the chance. As soon as the turkey was served, Stephanie stood clinking her glass dramatically. She was radiant in a fitted red dress, her engagement ring catching the light as she raised her hand. "Tyler and I are engaged," she announced, beaming at her boyfriend of 6 months. The table erupted in cheers and congratulations. My mother burst into tears of joy. My father stood to embrace them both. "Welcome to the family, son," he said to Tyler, clapping him on the back. What followed was an hour of wedding planning discussion. My mother immediately began listing potential venues. My father talked about how he had been saving for Stephanie's wedding since she was born. My grandmother removed her heirloom pearl necklace and presented it to Stephanie as her something old. I sat quietly sipping my wine, my own news shrinking in importance with each passing minute. When dessert was served, my Aunt Susan turned to me, perhaps noticing my silence. "So, Megan, what is new with you? Still at that same company?" I straightened in my seat, grateful for the opening. "Actually, yes. I was made junior partner last week. The youngest in firm history." A brief moment of quiet fell over the table before my father broke it with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Junior partner at a real estate office? That is just a fancy title for someone who shows houses, is it not?" The casual cruelty of his comments stunned me into silence. My mother filled the gap. "Not everyone can find their true calling like Stephanie. Some people just work jobs." Something broke inside me then. 10 years of accumulated disappointment crystallized into a moment of clarity. I set down my wine glass carefully. "I do not show houses. I negotiate multi-million-dollar commercial property deals. Last month I closed a transaction worth $8 million. My voice was steady despite the emotion building in my chest. "But you have never bothered to understand what I do, because it does not fit your narrow view of success." The table fell silent. My father's face darkened. "This is Thanksgiving dinner, Megan. Your sister just announced her engagement. Must you make everything about yourself?" I laughed then, a hollow sound that surprised even me. When have I ever made anything about myself? When have I ever been allowed to? I looked around the table at my family, these people who had witnessed my invisibility for years and accepted it as normal. Even now, they looked uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes, some studying their plates with sudden interest. "I have spent my entire life trying to make you proud," I said, looking directly at my parents. "Nothing has ever been enough." My mother's expression hardened. "Maybe it would be better if you focused on your own life then. Clearly, we are such a disappointment to you." The breathtaking reversal, making me the villain in this scenario, was the final confirmation of what I had always suspected, but never wanted to admit. There was no winning here. No achievement would ever be sufficient. I stood up, gathering my coat and purse. Thank you for making this so clear. I will not bother you with my accomplishments again. I walked out of my childhood home for the last time that night. My father did not call after me. My mother did not try to stop me. No one did. In the weeks that followed, I waited for someone to reach out. I thought perhaps one of my aunts or my grandfather might call to check on me. The silence was absolute. I sent a text to my mother after a week. I would like to talk when you are ready. Her response was brief and formal. We are very busy with Stephanie's wedding planning. I tried once more at Christmas, sending cards to my parents and sister. The one to my parents was returned unopened. Stephanie sent a terse message. Please do not create drama during my engagement. By New Year, I understood that the rupture was complete. I had committed the unforgivable sin of demanding recognition. For that, I was excised from the family narrative. I made a few attempts to maintain connections with extended family. I sent birthday cards to cousins, called my grandmother occasionally. The conversations were strained, filled with careful omissions. No one mentioned my parents or Stephanie. Gradually, these connections faded too. My grandmother passed away the following year. I attended the funeral and stood alone at the back of the church. My parents and sister occupied the front pew and did not acknowledge my presence. The last Christmas card I sent was 3 years after the Thanksgiving incident. It was returned with, "Not at this address," written on it, despite my parents still living in the same house. The message was clear. I no longer existed to them. After accepting that my family had chosen to remove me from their lives, I threw myself into building a life that fulfilled me. Work became both my distraction and my purpose. 6 months after the Thanksgiving confrontation, I was offered a position with a larger firm in Los Angeles. The role came with significant responsibility and a substantial salary increase. More importantly, it offered distance 3,000 miles between me and the family that did not want me. California felt like freedom. The constant sunshine and ocean breeze were so different from Boston's cold winters. I rented a small but modern apartment in Santa Monica, close enough to the beach that I could run along the shore each morning before work. For the first time, I was making decisions based solely on what I wanted, not on some futile hope of earning approval. It was at a real estate networking event that I met Jasmine Torres, a brilliant property lawyer with a laugh that filled the room. We bonded immediately over being young women in a male-dominated industry. Jasmine had grown up in foster care and understood family wounds in a way few others could. Family is who shows up, she told me, over margaritas the night we became friends. Blood is just genetics. The rest is choice. Jasmine became the sister I had lost, the one who celebrated my victories and held space for my pain. When I closed my first major California deal, she organized a surprise party. When I cried on my birthday, after receiving no calls from family, she showed up with ice cream and movies. We created our own traditions and support system. Work consumed most of my energy. I developed a reputation for being relentless, the associate who would stay latest and push hardest to close deals. My boss, Leonard, pulled me aside after my first year. "You are going to burn out at this pace, Megan. Success is a marathon, not a sprint." I could not explain to him that work was not just ambition for me, but anesthesia. Every hour focused on spreadsheets and property valuations was an hour not spent wondering why I had been so easy to discard. Therapy was Jasmine's idea. She recommended her own therapist, Dr. Karen Larson, a woman with kind eyes and a direct manner that brooked no self-deception. "You are trying to prove your worth through achievement," Dr. Larson said during our third session. "But worth is inherent, not earned. Your family's inability to see your value reflects their limitations, not yours." Those words were a revelation, though it would take years before I truly believed them. I continued weekly sessions, gradually unpacking the patterns established in childhood, the desperate need for validation, the belief that love was conditional on performance, the habit of making myself smaller to avoid threatening others. My career continued its upward trajectory. 4 years after moving to California, I had saved enough to make my first personal real estate investment, a small fourplex in an up-and-coming neighborhood. I renovated the units myself on weekends, learning plumbing and basic electrical work from YouTube videos. When I sold the property 18 months later, I doubled my investment. This became my pattern: buy, improve, sell, reinvest. By 30, I had enough capital and experience to launch my own boutique investment firm, Anderson Property Group. I hired a small, dedicated team and focused on revitalizing neglected commercial and residential properties. Success followed success. A profile in Business Insider called me real estate's rising star. My net worth crossed into 7 figures, then 8. I bought a comfortable condo in a luxury building and filled it with art that spoke to me. I traveled when I wanted, donated to causes I believed in, built a life of meaning and purpose. And still, in quiet moments, the family-shaped hole remained. Success had not filled it. Therapy had helped me understand it. Time had taught me to live with it. But nothing had healed it completely. Then, on my 32nd birthday, Jasmine and I took a drive up the coast to Malibu. We were celebrating the successful completion of our largest joint project, a mixed-use development that had transformed a neglected neighborhood and created affordable housing alongside commercial space. Let us just look at some of the properties Jasmine suggested as we drove along the Pacific Coast Highway, birthday window shopping. That is when I saw it, a stunning modern home perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the endless blue of the Pacific. A for sale sign swaying gently in the breeze. Something about the house called to me. It stood alone, self-contained, and beautiful in its isolation. Strong despite being surrounded by the constant crash of waves, I felt an immediate connection. The price was astronomical, far beyond what I would normally consider prudent. But standing on the deck, watching dolphins play in the distance, I made the most emotional financial decision of my life. "This is home," I told the realtor. "I will take it." The beach house became my sanctuary. I furnished it carefully, each piece chosen for comfort and meaning rather than status. The massive living room windows became my meditation focus, the changing ocean my constant companion. I spent weekends beachcombing, collecting sea glass, and interesting driftwood that I displayed throughout the house. More than any other place I had lived, the beach house felt like an extension of myself, strong, independent, with hidden depths and unexpected warmth. When business associates expressed surprise at a single woman living alone in such a large space, I smiled. I spent too many years making myself small, I would say. I am done with that now. When travel picked up after pandemic restrictions eased, I listed the house with a high-end property management company for short-term rentals during periods when I traveled for business. The income was unnecessary but practical, and I liked the idea of others enjoying the peace I had found there. I had built a life that reflected my values, surrounded myself with chosen family who celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges. The wound of my blood family's rejection had scarred over, still visible but no longer constantly painful. Or so I thought, until the day their names appeared in my inbox after 10 years of silence. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in April. I was at my desk by 7 a.m., reviewing quarterly projections while sipping the strong black coffee that fueled my early starts. My assistant Alexis would not arrive for another hour, so the office was peacefully quiet. Email management was part of my morning routine, a systematic clearing of the inbox before the day's meetings began. Delete, archive, respond, delegate. I moved through messages efficiently until I froze coffee cup halfway to my lips. From Judith Anderson, Juditha58@gmail.com, subject family reunion. Details. June 1, 5, 2. My mother's name in my inbox after 10 years of absolute silence. My hand trembled slightly as I set down my cup. For a moment, I considered deleting the message unread. What good could come from reopening old wounds? But curiosity overrode caution, and I clicked. The email was clearly not intended for me. It was addressed to family and contained details about a week-long reunion planned for June. My eyes skimmed the enthusiastic text about reconnecting, shared meals, beach activities, and memory-making. "We have secured the perfect luxury beach rental in Malibu," my mother wrote. "Harold and I are covering the cost as our gift to the family. We cannot wait to have everyone together again." Together again. As though they had been including me all along. As though there had not been 10 years of reunions, holidays, and gatherings from which I had been deliberately excluded. I scrolled down to find a detailed itinerary and a list of attendees: my parents, Judith and Harold, my sister Stephanie, her husband Tyler, and their children Emma and Jack, nephews and nieces I had never met. Various aunts, uncles, and cousins, all familiar names from a life I had left behind. My name was noticeably absent from the list. I had been included in the email by mistake, perhaps as part of an old family distribution list that no one had bothered to update. The realization stung more than it should have after all this time. Not only had they continued having family gatherings without me, but they had not even thought to remove my email from their contacts. I was about to close the message when another email notification appeared. My Aunt Eleanor, my father's sister, and the family member I had once been closest to. From Eleanor Jensen, eleanor.jensen@outlook.com, subject family reunion details. The message was brief. "Megan, did you receive Judith's email about the reunion? There is something you should know. Call me." I had not spoken to Aunt Eleanor in years. After my grandmother's funeral, she had tried to maintain contact, but our conversations had grown increasingly strained as she avoided mentioning my parents or sister. Eventually, the calls stopped. This sudden outreach aroused my suspicion. I did not call. Instead, I replied with a short message. "I received it by mistake. I am not on the attendee list." Her response came quickly. "That is what I thought. You might want to know where they are staying. Check the rental listing." She included a link to a high-end vacation rental site. I clicked it with growing unease. And there it was, my house. My Malibu beach house with its distinctive blue front door and wraparound deck. The place that had become my sanctuary, my true home, was listed as the venue for my estranged family's reunion. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. I clicked through the professional photos of my own space. The living room where I read by the fireplace on foggy mornings. The kitchen where Jasmine and I cooked elaborate Saturday dinners. The primary bedroom with the reading nook I had custom built to perfectly fit the alcove. According to the booking details, my parents had reserved the house for the entire second week of June, paying a premium for the ocean view and private beach access. They had no idea they were sending money to a property management company that would forward their payment minus fees to me. I sat back in my chair, mind racing. The coincidence was so improbable it seemed like fate, though I had long since stopped believing in such things. My estranged family had inadvertently chosen my home for their reunion, a gathering to which I had not been invited. The irony was almost too perfect. They would be sleeping in my beds, cooking in my kitchen, living in the space that represented everything I had built without them, and they had no idea. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, surprising in its genuine amusement. The situation was objectively absurd. What were the odds? Of all the rental properties in Malibu, they had chosen mine. I had 3 options as I saw it. I could cancel the reservation through the management company, citing an unexpected need to use the property myself. I could allow the rental to proceed without revealing myself collecting their money while they remained ignorant of the connection. Or I could make an appearance revealing the truth in what would undoubtedly be a dramatic confrontation. None of these options felt entirely right. Canceling seemed like running away. Taking their money without disclosure felt dishonest. Confronting them risked reopening wounds that had taken years to heal. I needed advice from the people who had become my true family. "They are staying at your house." Jasmine's voice rose in disbelief as we sat on my office balcony during lunch break. "That is some cosmic joke." I showed her the rental listing on my phone, watching her eyes widen as she recognized the familiar spaces. "What are you going to do?" she asked, handing the phone back. "I do not know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to cancel the reservation out of spite. Another part wants to let them stay without ever knowing whose house they enjoyed." Jasmine considered this twirling pasta around her fork thoughtfully. "Or you could show up, reclaim your narrative." The thought sent a jolt of anxiety through me. And say, "What? Surprise? The daughter you discarded owns this multi-million-dollar property you are vacationing in?" "Maybe not exactly like that," Jasmine laughed. "But, yes, essentially, show them who you have become without needing their approval." I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Larson that evening, arriving at her cozy office still unsure of how to proceed. "This situation has triggered a lot of old pain," Dr. Larson observed after I explained the bizarre coincidence. "But it also presents an opportunity for closure on your terms." "What does healthy closure look like in this situation?" I asked. "That depends on what you want from it," she replied. "Are you seeking reconciliation, acknowledgement, or simply to demonstrate that their rejection did not destroy you?" I considered her question carefully. I stopped wanting their approval years ago, but I think I still want them to see that I succeeded despite them, not because of them. Dr. Larson nodded. "That is honest. Just remember that whatever reaction they have belongs to them, not you. Your worth is not determined by their response." Over the next few days, I weighed my options. I received an automated email from Coastal Luxury Properties, the management company that handled my rental bookings when I was away. Confirmation of reservation, June 15 through 22. Anderson party of 12. Full payment received. Anderson party, my name not theirs. The irony was not lost on me. I called the property manager, Rachel, who had handled my house for the past 2 years. "I need to discuss the June 15th reservation," I said after exchanging pleasantries. "Is there a problem?" Rachel asked. "The Anderson booking. They seem like a lovely family. The woman mentioned it is their first reunion in Malibu." "No problem," I assured her. "But I might be stopping by during their stay. Family friends." I added the half-truth sticking in my throat. "Of course," Rachel said. "It is your house. I will make a note in the system." As the reunion date approached, I found myself thinking more about my family than I had in years. Memories surfaced unbidden. My father teaching me to ride a bike before Stephanie was born in those brief years when I had been the only child. My mother braiding my hair for the first day of school. Moments of connection that had grown increasingly rare as family dynamics calcified. The week before the reunion, I made my decision. I would not cancel. I would not hide. I would make a carefully planned appearance, not out of spite or vengeance, but to reclaim my place in my own story. I spent the days leading up to their arrival preparing the house, not in the usual way. I readied it for rental guests, but making it unmistakably mine. I replaced the generic rental photos with personal ones, me at business awards ceremonies, with Jasmine at charity events, on international travels. I made sure my diplomas and business magazine features were visible in the home office. I left my collection of signed first edition novels on the shelves, rather than storing them away. The house would tell my story before I even appeared. The night before they were scheduled to arrive, I sat on my deck watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink. For the first time since discovering the coincidence, I felt completely at peace with my decision. Whatever happened tomorrow, I would be facing it as the woman I had become, not the daughter desperate for approval that I had once been. I texted Jasmine, decision made. I am showing up tomorrow afternoon. Wish me strength. Her reply came immediately. You do not need luck. You have yourself. That has always been enough. I parked my car on the street, overlooking my property just out of sight of the driveway. From this vantage point, I could observe the arrivals without being seen. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, my breathing controlled. The anxiety I had anticipated was present but manageable, more like pre-presentation jitters than genuine distress. The first car arrived shortly after the 1 p.m. check-in time, a silver SUV I did not recognize. My Aunt Eleanor and Uncle Frank emerged, followed by their adult children. Eleanor looked older than I remembered, her once dark hair now completely gray. They unloaded suitcases with the excited energy of people beginning a long-anticipated vacation. More vehicles followed in quick succession. Cousins with spouses and children I had never met. My Uncle Gregory, my father's younger brother, still sporting the beard he had worn since college. Each familiar face was slightly altered by the decade that had passed, like looking at a photo that had been subtly edited. At 2:30 p.m., a black luxury sedan pulled into the driveway. My parents stepped out, my father's once commanding posture, now slightly stooped, my mother's hair shorter, and styled differently than I remembered. They looked smaller, somehow less intimidating than they had loomed in my memory. Behind them came another vehicle, and my breath caught as my sister Stephanie emerged with a man who must be Tyler. 2 children scrambled out after them, a girl about 8 and a boy, perhaps 5 or 6. My niece and nephew, blood relatives who were complete strangers. I watched as my family gathered on the front porch of my house, exclaiming over the view, the architecture, the location. My father unlocked the door with the code that would have been provided by the management company. They disappeared inside, their voices fading as the heavy door closed behind them. I gave them an hour to settle in, to explore the house and claim bedrooms, to begin unpacking and planning their week. Then I drove down the winding road to my own driveway, parking behind the row of family vehicles. The walk to my front door felt surreal, like a dream where familiar elements are arranged in impossible configurations. I could hear laughter and conversation from inside, the soundtrack of family togetherness that had continued without me for a decade. I had my key, of course, but it felt wrong to enter unannounced. This might be my house, but today I was in some strange way a guest at their gathering. I rang the doorbell. The door swung open to reveal my mother, a welcoming smile freezing on her face as recognition dawned. For a long moment, we simply stared at each other, the gulf of 10 years stretching between us. Megan. Her voice was barely a whisper. Hello, Mom. I said the word, feeling foreign on my tongue after so many years. She remained frozen in the doorway, neither inviting me in nor closing the door. Behind her, I could see family members in the living room, heads turning curiously toward the entrance. Who is it, Judith? My father's voice called from inside before he appeared behind her. He stopped abruptly when he saw me, his expression cycling rapidly through shock, confusion, and something that might have been guilt. Megan, he said, his voice carefully neutral. This is unexpected. By now, the activity inside had ceased entirely. The house had fallen silent as everyone registered the unexpected arrival. I could see Stephanie standing in the kitchen doorway, a glass of wine motionless in her hand. May I come in? I asked, maintaining the polite fiction that I was requesting entrance to their space rather than my own. My mother stepped back mechanically, opening the door wider. I crossed the threshold into my home, now occupied by the family that had excluded me. There seems to have been some confusion with the invitation, my father said, recovering enough to attempt an explanation. We were not sure of your current contact information. The transparent lie hung in the air between us. My email address had clearly been current enough to receive the group message, even if by mistake. No confusion, I replied calmly. I was not on the guest list. I saw the email that was sent to everyone. My Aunt Eleanor stepped forward, then the only one who had known this moment was coming. Megan, it is good to see you, she said, offering a gentle hug that felt like the first genuine human contact in this surreal scenario. Stephanie approached cautiously, her children half hidden behind her legs. How did you know where we were staying? She asked. And here it was, the moment of revelation. I took a deep breath and looked around the room at my assembled relatives, all watching me with expressions ranging from confusion to discomfort. I knew because this is my house, I said simply. I own this property. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's hand flew to her throat in a gesture of shock I had never seen outside of movies. My father stood perfectly still, his face unreadable. That is not possible, he finally said. This house costs thousands per week to rent, millions to purchase. I met his gaze steadily. Yes, it does. Understanding dawned on his face, followed quickly by disbelief. You are saying you can afford a property like this? I am not saying I can afford it. I am saying I own it. There is no mortgage. I purchased it outright 2 years ago. Murmurs spread through the gathered family members. I could see them looking around with new eyes, noticing perhaps for the first time the photos of me throughout the house, the evidence of my life and success that I had deliberately left visible. Stephanie broke the tension with an awkward laugh. Well, this is a surprise. Would you like something to drink? The absurdity of being offered a drink in my own kitchen almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded. Water would be fine. As Stephanie moved to the kitchen, my mother seemed to recover her composure, social instincts overriding the shock. Perhaps we should all sit down, she suggested, gesturing to the living room, as though she were the hostess. I followed them into my living room, taking a seat in the armchair that had always been my favorite reading spot. My family arranged themselves awkwardly on the sofas, an impromptu family reunion 10 years in the making. You look well, my mother offered tentatively. Thank you. I am well. And you work in real estate? My father asked, clearly trying to reconcile the daughter who had left with the woman who now owned this impressive property. I own Anderson Property Group, I said. We specialize in commercial and luxury residential investments. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Anderson Property Group. I have read about your company in the Wall Street Journal. I nodded, neither confirming nor denying. Let him wonder if the successful Megan Anderson he might have read about was his daughter, the one whose career he had dismissed as playing with houses. The conversation continued in fits, and starts painfully polite inquiries about my life that carefully avoided acknowledging the decade of silence. I answered truthfully but without elaboration, offering no emotional openings. After the initial shock wore off my sister's children, Emma and Jack became curious about the aunt they had never met. Emma, showing none of the awkwardness of the adults, approached my chair. Are you really my aunt? She asked with 8-year-old directness. I confirmed. How come we never met you before? The innocent question silenced the room again. All the adults seemed to hold their breath, waiting for my answer. Sometimes grown-ups make complicated decisions, I said carefully. But I am glad to meet you now. Stephanie quickly suggested that the children might want to explore the beach. Her husband Tyler, who had remained silent throughout this uncomfortable reunion, volunteered to take them outside. Once the children were gone, my Aunt Eleanor spoke up. Perhaps Megan would give us a tour of her beautiful home. She suggested, emphasis on the word her. The tour became my opportunity to subtly reveal the life I had built. I showed them through the house, pointing out features and renovations I had personally selected. I mentioned the circumstances of significant purchases or design choices, each story a glimpse into my successful, fulfilling life. My mother trailed behind, occasionally reaching out to touch things as though confirming their reality. My father maintained a careful distance, his expression unreadable. When we reached the deck overlooking the ocean, the rest of the family tactfully dispersed, leaving me alone with my parents. The three of us stood at the railing, watching waves crash against the shore below. "Why did you not tell us?" my mother finally asked. "Tell you what? That I had become successful? That I had built a good life? When would I have done that after you returned my Christmas cards? After you excluded me from family gatherings for a decade?" My father cleared his throat. "We thought you wanted nothing to do with us. You walked out that Thanksgiving." The revision of history was breathtaking in its audacity. I reached out multiple times after that night. You chose not to respond. "We were hurt," my mother said. "You accused us of favoritism." "Not accused, named. There is a difference." A silence fell between us, filled only by the sound of waves and distant laughter from the children on the beach below. "Your sister's engagement was important," my father said, a last attempt at justification. "Everything about Stephanie was always important," I replied without heat. "Everything about me was always secondary. I simply reached a point where I was no longer willing to accept that dynamic." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "And now you have all this," she gestured at the house, "the view to prove us wrong." "No," I said firmly. "I did not build this life to prove anything to you. I built it for me. The fact that you are standing in my home right now is coincidence, not intention." "But now that we are here," my father began, "perhaps this is an opportunity to reconnect, to be a family again." I studied him carefully. This man whose approval I had sought for so many years. "What exactly are you proposing? That we pretend the last decade never happened? That you did not choose to cut me out of your lives?" "People make mistakes," my mother said softly. "They do," I agreed. "And sometimes those mistakes have permanent consequences." I turned to face them fully. "I am not interested in reconciliation without accountability. I am not interested in a relationship where my success is suddenly the reason I am worthy of inclusion. If you want to be part of my life now, you need to understand why you were not part of it for the past 10 years. They exchanged glances, uncomfortable with this direct challenge. "We can discuss this later," my father said, retreating to his habit of deferring difficult conversations. "This is supposed to be a family vacation." "Yes," I said. "It is. And I will leave you to enjoy it. This is still your rental for the week. I have a condo in the city where I will stay." "You do not have to leave," my mother protested, though without much conviction. "I think it is best," I replied. "You all have catching up to do, and I have work commitments." As I turned to go, I realized something profound had shifted inside me. Standing there with my parents in the home I had created without them, I no longer felt the ache of their rejection. I no longer needed their approval or understanding. Their opinion of me, once so devastating in its dismissal, now carried no more weight than that of any casual acquaintance. In seeking to exclude me, they had inadvertently set me free. I stayed in my city condo during the reunion week, maintaining a careful distance while still making occasional appearances at the beach house. Each visit was on my terms, scheduled and time-limited. I brought toys for my niece and nephew, getting to know these children who shared my blood, but had been strangers until now. Emma, with her curious nature and direct questions, became an unexpected bridge between worlds. Unlike the adults, she had no history to overcome, no predetermined narrative about who I was or should be. To her, I was simply Aunt Megan, the lady with the cool house who knew all the best tide pools. "Why do you live here all alone?" she asked, during a beachcombing expedition. "Do not you get lonely?" "I am not alone," I explained. "I have close friends who are like family to me." and sometimes being by yourself is not the same as being lonely. She considered this with the seriousness only children can bring to philosophical questions. I think I would like a house by the ocean when I grow up too. Maybe you will have one, I told her, helping her collect shells in her plastic bucket. The relationship with my sister Stephanie evolved more slowly. Years of competition fostered by our parents had created wounds on both sides. On the third evening of their stay, she asked if we could talk privately. We sat on the deck after everyone else had gone to bed, two adult women trying to find common ground across a decade of absence. "Your house is beautiful," she began awkwardly. "Thank you. I did not know you were so successful," she continued. "Mom and Dad never talked about what you were doing." "I am not surprised," I said. "I doubt they knew themselves." Stephanie fidgeted with her wine glass. "I should have reached out to you independently. After Thanksgiving, after the wedding. I let them define our relationship." It was the closest thing to an apology I had received from any family member, and its unexpectedness caught me off guard. "Why did not you?" She sighed. "At first I was caught up in wedding planning, then having kids. But honestly, I think I was afraid." "Of what?" "That you would reject me, that you would be angry, that you would be right to be both those things." She met my eyes directly. "And maybe I was a little afraid to face the truth about how differently they treated us." The admission hung in the air between us, the first acknowledgement from anyone in my family that my perception had been accurate. "It was not your fault," I said finally. "No, but my silence afterward was my choice. And I am sorry for that." We talked for hours that night, filling in the missing decade. She told me about her children, her part-time teaching job, her marriage that looked perfect on the outside but had its own complexities. I shared stories of building my business, my friendships, my journey to self-acceptance. By the time we said goodnight, something had shifted between us. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but the possibility of it. A door left slightly ajar. My parents were more complicated. They made awkward overtures that stopped short of true accountability. My mother brought up childhood memories, selectively emphasizing the few times when I had been the focus of attention. My father made comments about my business acumen, as though my success had retroactively justified my choice to pursue a path he had once dismissed. Neither directly acknowledged the harm they had caused. Neither seemed capable of recognizing the pattern that had led to our estrangement. When my father suggested that we all made mistakes, I finally addressed it head-on. "What mistake did I make?" I asked. "Wanting to be valued equally, expecting my achievements to be acknowledged, setting boundaries when they were not." He had no answer, just uncomfortable silence. On their last evening, I hosted a dinner for the entire family at the beach house. Jasmine joined us, my chosen family meeting my biological one. She charmed everyone with her warmth and humor, while maintaining a protective presence beside me. As the meal concluded, my mother approached me in the kitchen, where I was preparing coffee. "We would like to be part of your life again," she said. "Now that we have found you." Her phrasing was revealing. They had not found me. I had never been lost. They had simply failed to look. "That will depend on several things," I said, arranging cups on a tray. "I am not interested in conditional relationships anymore. I will not make myself smaller to make anyone else comfortable. I will not pretend the past did not happen." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that if you want a relationship with me now, it will be on different terms than before. I do not need your approval anymore. I do not need you to understand my choices or validate my success. I am offering the possibility of a new relationship, not the resurrection of the old one." She seemed taken aback by my directness. "And if we cannot accept those terms, then nothing changes," I said simply. "I have built a good life without you in it. I can continue to do so." The power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. For the first time in our relationship, I was not the supplicant hoping for acceptance. I was offering them the privilege of knowing me, as I truly was an offer they were free to accept or decline. The morning of their departure, I arrived to say goodbye. The week had been emotionally exhausting but clarifying. I had faced my past without being consumed by it. I had shown myself that I could engage with my family from a place of strength rather than need. My Aunt Eleanor hugged me tightly before getting into her car. "I am proud of who you have become," she whispered. "And I am sorry I did not fight harder to stay connected." My niece Emma made me promise to video chat regularly. "You can show me the dolphins when they swim by your house," she insisted. Stephanie and I exchanged contact information with a tentative plan to visit each other in the coming months. "This does not have to be the end," she said. "It could be a beginning." My parents were the last to leave. We stood in the driveway, the morning sun casting long shadows across the pavement. "Thank you for not canceling our reservation," my father said stiffly. "You are welcome to rent it again," I replied, the subtle reminder of our positions bringing a flush to his face. My mother hesitated, then stepped forward to embrace me. I allowed it but did not fully return the gesture. Some boundaries would remain necessary for now. "We will call you," she promised. "I will answer if I can," I responded, making no promises of my own. I watched them drive away, feeling neither triumph nor sorrow, just a quiet certainty that whatever happened next, I would be okay. After they left, I walked through my empty house, reclaiming each space with my presence. I opened windows to release the lingering tension, straightened furniture, restored my personal items to their proper places. Jasmine came over that evening with takeout and wine. "How are you feeling?" she asked as we settled on the deck. "Peaceful," I answered, surprising myself with the truth of it. Like I have finally closed a chapter that has been left unfinished for too long. "Do you think they will actually try to maintain contact?" I considered the question. Perhaps. But it does not matter as much as I thought it would. I realized something this week. I have been defining myself in opposition to them for so long, proving I could succeed without them. But that still meant they were central to my story. And now I get to define myself on my own terms. Not as their daughter who succeeded despite them, just as Megan who built a life she loves. In the weeks that followed, I received tentative communications. A text from Stephanie with photos of the children, an email from my mother with careful pleasantries, a birthday card from my father, the first in a decade. I responded when I felt like it, without obligation or expectation. Sometimes I shared aspects of my life, sometimes I kept my replies brief. I maintained the boundaries I had established, neither pursuing reconciliation nor rejecting its possibility. My Aunt Eleanor became a regular presence, bridging the gap between my past and present. She visited the beach house, often filling in family history I had missed or never known. "Your grandmother would be so proud of you," she told me during one visit. "She always said you had a fire in you that no one understood." The greatest gift of this unexpected reunion was the freedom from seeking validation. I no longer wondered if I was worthy of love, if my achievements were significant enough to earn recognition. I had proven to myself that I could stand alone if necessary, that my worth was inherent rather than earned. Dr. Larson called this self-authorization, the process of becoming the authority on your own value, rather than outsourcing that judgment to others. "This is what healing looks like," she said during our session after the reunion. "Not the absence of scars, but the freedom from being defined by them." As summer turned to fall, I found myself spending more time mentoring young women in business, sharing not just professional knowledge, but personal wisdom about self-worth and boundaries. My story, once a source of shame, became a resource for others navigating similar family dynamics. "The family we are born into teaches us how to relate to others," I would tell them. "But we get to decide which lessons to keep and which to leave behind. We get to choose our own definition of family." The beach house remained my sanctuary, but it no longer represented escape or isolation. It was simply home, a place that reflected who I had become. Sometimes it was filled with chosen family for celebrations. Sometimes it hosted tentative visits from blood relatives working to earn a place in my life. Always it stood strong against the crashing waves, neither defiant nor yielding, simply present. Like me. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who did not treat you with the respect you deserved? What helped you find the strength to stand up for yourself? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by family approval. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing and self-discovery. And remember that sometimes the most powerful